All right, we're getting in breaking inputs here. Our under-19 World Cup heroes arriving in India. This, of course, after a dramatic, well-deserved win that they've had at the World Cup. Our correspondent for sports, Viren, getting us further details here on how this is, of course, without doubt, going to be a very special homecoming here for the winning side.
Well, absolutely, sir. We're seeing the Indian team, of course, being received very warmly. And it's the kind of performance they put in New Zealand that's given them the sports world title that's really got the whole country to sit up and take notice. The manner of their victory, especially in the final, sent a real message to not just their opponents, Australia, but across the cricketing world that, here's a bunch of really talented players who are on the cusp of course, making their transition to the international team. We've also seen the BCCI, announce a big cash reward for these players for their efforts in the tournament, earning them each 30 lakh rupees, as well as the coach, Rahul Dravid, who earned 50 lakh rupees. So it really shows you that the BCCI is has been absolutely thrilled. I mean, India, of course, were one of the top teams favorites to win the World Cup. But the man of their
not just the top team there, Viren, the unbeaten side, not beaten even a single time through the entire tournament.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you've got to win the World Cup, then you have to really put on your best performance. India seemed to hit the ground running from the word go. In the opening game against Australia, they really sent a message out to everybody in the tournament that they would really take some serious beating, and none of the teams were able to come up with any sort of plan to try and shut this Indian team down, whether it was with bat, or with the ball, or for that matter in the field. The Indian team really showing that supremacy all the way through, which really shows you that 5 Indian players, in fact, made it to the ICC best 11 of the tournament, which I think is a sign of India's domination.
And the names that have come up really, of course, are new stars, many of them who are going to be featuring in the national team as well. We've seen in the past, we've seen how Virat Kohli was part of the winning side of the under-19 and several other stars here as well. Those are the latest images, of course, that we're getting you live images of those young stars there in this brilliant homecoming, where each one of them, Viren, now as we speak, of course, have now become already household names.
Well, absolutely. And the way that they, in fact, went about winning the World Cup is something that got, people even more interested. I think whether it was Shubman Gill, who, with his swashbuckling batting really got people to sit up and take notice, or for that matter, Manjot Kalra, who really came to the party in the final of the tournament, or for that matter, someone like Prithvi Shaw, who's done it at virtually every age group level ever since he played school cricket on the Maidans of Mumbai, and then going on to, of course, lead the under-19 team to the world title. It is really promising talent with the ball, which is something that India has lacked in the past. 3 or 4 pacers who can really, trouble opposition. Spinners, of course, who continue to trouble opposition across the world. I think that is a great sign for Indian cricket going forward.
And congratulations that have continued to come in through the weekend, even up to this date as we speak, in massive congratulatory messages here that have continued for Team India. Several of those young faces there on our screen in that special homecoming and welcome back home after being declared winners there at the Under-19 World Cup. It's also a record of sorts here that they have managed to make as far as Team India under-19 there is concerned, and a record of 4 World Cups that has ever been won by one single country.
Well, India were tied with Australia going to the final of the tournament. Australia had won 3 previously, and India hadn't won a title ever since 2012. So, there was an opportunity here to really stake one's claim to be the top side of the age group level, and India really to grab that chance with both hands. I think India, were well prepared, as Rahul Dravid said. They spent a couple of weeks in New Zealand prior to the tournament beginning, which allowed them to really set themselves up well. They got used to the conditions, and because of that, there was virtually no competition for them, and which is how they ended up being so dominant all through the tournament and even in the final.
Viren, take us through some of those names there. Each one of them now stars in their own right. But those, of course, who've shown the kind of promise now to be part of the national team of India in the future.
Well, that's something that Rahul Dravid said very clearly in his interview he did after the match was over. He said, "I hope that this is not the brightest day that these players have, because his real challenge from now on will be to help these boys transition from the under-19 team to the Indian team. And that's something that a lot of players have, in fact, struggled with in the past. Players like Virat Kohli, of course, are the exception to the rule. Virat dominated at under-19 level, and he's taken his game to another level at the senior level. But you've got also players like Unmukt Chand, who was a World Cup winning captain himself, who scored 100 in the final back in 2012, but unfortunately hasn't been able to, really earn his place in the Indian team. This team has got a lot of talent, which they've shown with a bat, whether it's the likes of Manju Kaldra, whether it's the likes of Shubman Gill, whether it's the likes of Prithvi Shaw, or for that matter, Shivam Mavi, and Anupul Roy, who was the top wicket taker in the tournament. Finn again, who was doing the trick, but it was ultimately a lot of hard work from the Indian pacers, including Kamlesh Nagarkoti, which really set India up to be the dominant force that they were, both with bat and particularly with the ball, because they dismissed their opposition out every single time. In every 6 of those matches, they managed to bowl out the opposition batsman, which is in itself, I think, a very heartening sight for any Indian fan.
Viren, a lot of them, of course, also would be making it to the upcoming IPL season as well. That being yet another platform where they'll be able to display their absolute brilliance.
That's a part of their learning experience now, because they've sort of grabbed the attention of the world, and particularly now the IPL franchises, as showing them what they can do, what they're capable of. And they will learn from that experience, because they will rub shoulders with some of the senior players who've been there, done that. The best in the world. Some will get the experience of someone like a Ricky Ponting, who is the coach of the Delhi Daredevils. I think that adds its own sort of value to the player and that's own learning. So that's something that's very important, something that they learn from. Of course, they've got to keep their feet on the ground, because it's very easy to get carried away, but to be able to sustain this performance, it's going to really be the test of their character and of their talent.
That's right, and leading right from the front, being the captain of the under-19 national team there, 18-year-old Prithvi Shaw, as we speak, being congratulated with flowers and sweets, huge homecoming there for the team. It's also about an incredible kind of consistency that India has shown as far as the under-19 World Cup is concerned at the global stage there. Viren.
Well, it takes a lot of investment, as the BCCI found out, that if you invest enough in the youth of your country, if you invest enough in the next generation of your country, that makes a massive difference to the success rate of that team. And we saw it with the Women's World Cup as well, where the BCCI had suddenly decided that they would begin to fund women's cricket in a bigger way, that they would give them better resources, give them access to what the men's team really gets in terms of training and infrastructure. And that took them to the final of the Women's World Cup. And the U19 team as well was given a lot of help. We had Rahul Dravid, who was their permanent coach, who was in charge for the last 2 years. He was working day in and day out, and that has really worked, because to be able to build a cohesive unit, you need to have them together. You need to have a sort of a sense of direction, which Rahul Dravid was able to provide them. And I think the results are there for everyone to see.
Absolutely. Many thanks, Viren, for getting us those inputs there. Just right outside the international airport, a brilliant homecoming for the winning team.